We get the breaking news in the sports world, and it's another honor for our Las Vegas superstar. She's the MVP, and now A'ja Wilson is Time's Athlete of the Year. Check it out. This is the cover that they just posted on social media just moments ago with quite the majestic photo shoot.
Time magazine just crowned A'ja Wilson Athlete of the Year, and somehow they managed to turn her moment into another Caitlin Clark controversy. The article that was supposed to celebrate Asia's dominance spent half its time taking shots at Caitlin, the same player they named Sportswoman of the Year just last year. Now the internet's on fire, fans are furious, and Time magazine's getting dragged for completely missing the point. This wasn't just bad journalism. This was a masterclass in self-sabotage. Do you think the media creates these Caitlin Clark controversies on purpose, or are they just completely out of touch?
So then we dive deep into it, and it seems like there's some paragraphs from this article that put down Caitlin Clark in order to prop up A'ja, which is crazy because if you guys remember, Caitlin Clark was Time's Sportsperson of the Year just last year. So I haven't actually gone into detail reading these.
Let's talk about what actually happened. Time magazine published an article naming A'ja Wilson their Athlete of the Year for 2025. And look, A'ja absolutely deserves recognition. She won her third WNBA MVP. She won another championship with the Aces. She dominated at the Olympics and took home tournament MVP. She's one of the most dominant players in women's basketball history. This should have been her moment to shine. But instead, Time magazine decided to drag Caitlin Clark into it for absolutely no reason.
At an opportune time. In 2024, Caitlin Clark's rookie season helped the WNBA hit milestone TV and attendance figures, but Clark's emergence created a toxic, racially divisive narrative that she was almost singularly responsible for salvaging a league whose foundation had been built by mostly Black player base. I'm going to stop right there because, like I said, Caitlin Clark was Time Sportsperson of the Year last year, and in that article, she was asked multiple times about these narratives around Caitlin and the racial divide that happens in America, and specifically around women's basketball. It has gotten so insane, and she has denounced it so many times. She said it in the Times article that she doesn't want her name to be used for these different negative and divisive things that it's used for, and the fact that Time magazine named her Sportsperson of the Year in 2024 and then in 2025 turn around and put something like this in an article, by the way, you guys, that is supposed to prop up A'ja. This is Asia's moment to shine.
The article includes paragraphs that specifically mention Caitlin and the so-called toxic, racially divisive narrative around her. They wrote about how Caitlin's emergence created this narrative that she was almost singularly responsible for salvaging a league whose foundation had been built by a mostly Black player base. And then they quoted A'ja Wilson talking about how the storyline bothered her and how she felt like history was being erased for a minute. And fans immediately went, "Wait, what? Why is this in an article celebrating A'ja?" Here's the thing. Caitlin Clark was Time magazine's Sportswoman of the Year in 2024, just last year. And in that article, she was asked multiple times about these exact narratives, about race, about division, about people using her name to push agendas she doesn't support. And she shut it down every single time.
But it still comes down on your shoulders.
I feel like I always have had really good perspective on everything that's kind of happened in my life, whether that's been good, whether that's been bad. And then obviously coming to the WNBA, like I've said, I feel like I've earned every single thing that's happened to me over the course of my career. But also, I grew up a fan of this league from a very young age. Like, my favorite player was Maya Moore. Like, I know what this league was about. And like I said, like, it's only been around 25 plus years. So I know there's been so many amazing Black women that have been in this league, and continuing to uplift them, I think, is very important. And that's something I'm very aware of. And like I said, like, I try to just be real and authentic and, you know, share my truth. And I think that's very easy for me. Like, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. And that's kind of been how it is.
She said she doesn't want her name used for divisive purposes. She said she respects the players who came before her. She said the WNBA's growth is a team effort. She's been crystal clear about where she stands.
Got to get into today. A'ja Wilson, congratulations, won Time Athlete of the Year. Now, this would have been a great moment for A'ja Wilson to talk about her accomplishments, etc. But what did A'ja Wilson want to do? She wanted to take shots. She wanted to take shots. She wanted to fire off and get her subs in at Caitlin Clark.
So why is Time magazine, the The same publication that honored her last year, now throwing her under the bus in an article about someone else? That's not journalism. That's bait. That's creating drama where there doesn't need to be any. And it's disrespectful to both Caitlyn and Asia. Because Asia didn't ask for this. She didn't say anything negative about Caitlyn. The journalist just decided to make this article about controversy instead of celebration. Let's break down the actual quotes from the article. They wrote that Caitlyn's rocket ship run came at an opportune time and helped the WNBA hit milestone TV and attendance figures. That's true. But then they immediately followed it up with this line about how her emergence created a toxic, racially divisive narrative. And it's like, hold on. Caitlyn didn't create that narrative. The media did. Fans did. Politicians did. But Caitlyn? She's been trying to distance herself from it since day one.
Possible. This is Asia's time to shine. Why are we even bringing this up? Why are we bringing up the toxic, racially divisive narrative around Caitlyn Clark that she had nothing to do with?
And the fact that Time magazine is bringing this up in Asia's article is insulting. Because Asia's accomplishments have nothing to do with Caitlyn. Asia won MVP on her own merit. She won a championship on her own merit. She dominated the Olympics on her own merit. So why is Caitlyn's name even in this article? Why are we talking about racial division when we're supposed to be celebrating Asia's greatness? It doesn't make sense. Then the article quotes Asia saying, "It wasn't a hit at me because I'm going to do me regardless. I'm going to win this MVP. I'll win a gold medal. Y'all can check my resume. It was more so, let's not lose the recipe, let's not lose the history. It was erased for a minute." And look, I get what Asia's saying. She's proud of the WNBA's history. She's proud of the players who built the league. And she should be. But here's the problem. Nobody erased that history. Nobody's saying the WNBA didn't exist before Caitlyn Clark. What people are saying is that Caitlyn brought a new level of attention to the league. And that's not disrespectful to the players who came before her. That's just facts. The WNBA was growing slowly for years. And then Caitlyn came along and the growth exploded. Attendance records were shattered. TV ratings hit all-time highs. Jersey sales went through the roof. The Indiana Fever went from one of the least-watched teams in the league to the most-watched team in the league. That's the Caitlyn Clark effect. And pretending it didn't happen doesn't honor the past. It just ignores reality. But here's what really bothers me. The WNBA media has this weird habit of refusing to let anyone shine on their own. Every time we talk about Caitlyn, someone has to say, but don't forget about Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird. And it's like, we're not forgetting about them. We're just talking about Caitlyn right now. When we talk about LeBron James, we don't say, but don't forget about Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. We just talk about LeBron. Because that's how sports work. You celebrate the players who are doing great things now while respecting the ones who came before. But in the WNBA, you can't do that. You can't just celebrate Caitlyn without also mentioning 10 other players. And honestly, that's exhausting. Because it takes away from everyone's moment. When we talk about Caitlyn, we have to talk about Sue Bird. When we talk about Asia, we have to talk about Caitlyn. When can we just talk about one player without bringing everyone else into it? And then the article gets even worse. They wrote, despite Clark's missing most of the season with an injury, something Wilson, to be clear, did not cheer. To be clear, did not cheer? What kind of line is that? Who was cheering for Caitlyn's injury? Who was celebrating that she got hurt? Nobody. So why did Time magazine feel the need to clarify that Asia wasn't cheering for it? That's insane. That's the kind of line you write when you're trying to create controversy. Because now, people are reading that and thinking, wait, was someone cheering for her injury? Why did they have to clarify that Asia wasn't? It's ridiculous. It's bad journalism. And it's disrespectful to Asia. Because instead of focusing on her accomplishments, the article is focusing on Caitlyn's injury and making sure everyone knows Asia wasn't happy about it. Like, of course she wasn't. Nobody was. You don't have to say that. It's implied. But Time magazine said it anyway because they wanted to stir the pot. Then they talk about how viewership for the WNBA was up 5 to 6% during the regular season and postseason, even with Caitlyn injured. And they quote Asia saying, "Sometimes you need a proof in the pudding. The biggest thing for us and why I was so happy is that we continued to rise to the occasion. This was just a matter of time for us to really bloom and blossom." And again, that's great. The WNBA should be proud of their growth. But let's not pretend that 5 to 6% growth is the same as what happened when Caitlyn was playing. When Caitlyn got injured, viewership dropped by 50%. 50%. That's not a small drop. That's massive. And it proves exactly how important she is to the league's growth. But Time magazine conveniently left that part out. Instead, they focused on the 5 to 6% growth and acted like it was proof that the WNBA doesn't need Caitlyn, which is just false. The numbers don't lie. When Caitlyn plays, people watch. When she doesn't, they don't. That's not disrespectful to anyone else. That's just reality. And here's the other thing. Even when Caitlyn was injured, fans were still showing up to Fever games in Caitlyn Clark jerseys just to see her on the bench. She was signing autographs for 2 hours before games. People were buying tickets just to be in the same building as her. That's star power, that's influence. And pretending it doesn't exist is just lying to yourself. The whole article feels like it was written by someone who has an agenda. Someone who wants to push this narrative that Caitlyn's success is somehow bad for the WNBA. That she's stealing attention from other players. That she's erasing history. But that's not what's happening. Caitlyn's success is lifting the entire league. More people are watching the WNBA now than ever before. More people are buying tickets. More people are buying jerseys. And yes, a lot of that is because of Caitlyn. But that doesn't mean other players aren't benefiting too. A'ja Wilson is more famous now than she's ever been. People who never watched the WNBA before are now watching A'ja dominate. They're seeing her win MVPs and championships. They're seeing her represent Team USA at the Olympics. And a lot of those people started watching because of Caitlyn. So instead of being upset that Caitlyn's getting attention, maybe we should be grateful that she's bringing new fans to the sport. Fans who will stick around and support all the players, not just Caitlyn. But instead, the media keeps pushing this divisive narrative. They keep pitting players against each other. They keep acting like Caitlyn's success is a threat to everyone else. And honestly, it's getting old. Because it's not helping anyone. It's not helping A'ja. It's not helping Caitlyn. And it's definitely not helping the WNBA. Let's also talk about the fact that this article was supposed to be about A'ja. This was her moment. She won Athlete of the Year. That's a huge honor. And instead of the conversation being about her greatness, her dominance, her championships, her MVPs, it's all about Caitlyn. Again. Because Time magazine couldn't help themselves. They had to bring Caitlyn into it. And now A'ja's moment is overshadowed by controversy. How is that fair to her? If I were A'ja, I'd be annoyed. Because I didn't ask for this. I didn't say anything negative about Caitlyn. I just talked about my own accomplishments and how proud I am of the WNBA. But now the headline isn't A'ja Wilson wins Athlete of the Year. It's Time magazine drags Caitlyn Clark in A'ja Wilson article. And that's not A'ja's fault. That's the media's fault. And here's the thing. Caitlyn Clark is trending on Twitter right now because of this article. Not A'ja. Caitlyn. Because even when it's not about her, the media finds a way to make it about her. And then they turn around and blame her for getting too much attention. It's a vicious cycle, and it needs to stop. The WNBA is in the middle of a historic moment. They're negotiating a new CBA. They're getting more attention than ever before. They have a chance to capitalize on all this momentum and take the league to the next level. But instead of focusing on growth and unity, the media keeps creating division. They keep tearing players down instead of building them up. And it's hurting the league. Because here's what could have happened. Time magazine could have written an article celebrating A'ja's incredible year. They could have talked about her MVP season, her championship, her Olympic gold medal. They could have highlighted her skill, her leadership, her impact on the game. And that would have been amazing. Fans would have loved it. A'ja would have loved it. And the WNBA would have benefited from the positive coverage. But instead, they wrote an article that created controversy. They brought up Caitlyn unnecessarily. They made it seem like A'ja and Caitlyn are in competition with each other when they're not. They took what should have been a celebration and turned it into another argument. And now everyone's mad. Caitlyn fans are mad. A'ja fans are mad. WNBA fans in general are tired of this nonsense. And the worst part is, this keeps happening. Every time there's a positive story about Caitlyn, someone has to bring up how she's stealing attention from other players. Every time there's a positive story about another player, someone has to bring up Caitlyn. Can we please just let people have their moments? Can we please just celebrate greatness without tearing someone else down? When Caitlyn was named Time's Sportswoman of the Year last year, a WNBA owner said Time should have put the entire WNBA on the cover instead. That was ridiculous then, and it would be ridiculous now if someone said it about Asia. But I bet that same owner isn't saying anything now, because it's not about fairness. It's about who's getting the attention, and certain people can't stand that Caitlyn's getting so much of it. But here's the truth. Caitlyn didn't ask for any of this. She didn't create these narratives. She didn't ask to be the face of the WNBA's growth. She just went out and played basketball. She broke records. She sold out arenas. She made the game exciting. And people responded. That's not her fault. That's just what happens when you're that good and that marketable. And the media needs to accept that. They need to stop trying to tear her down every chance they get. They need to stop using her name to create controversy, because all it does is hurt the league. It makes the WNBA look petty. It makes it seem like the league can't handle success. And it drives fans away. People don't want to watch a league where the media is constantly creating drama. They want to watch great basketball. They want to celebrate great players. They want to root for teams and players they love. But when every story becomes about race or division or who's getting more attention, it stops being fun. And when it stops being fun, people stop watching. So Time Magazine, if you're listening, do better. Stop creating controversy where there doesn't need to be any. Stop pitting players against each other. And for the love of the game, let Asia Wilson have her moment without dragging Caitlyn Clark into it. Because Asia deserves better. Caitlyn deserves better. And the WNBA deserves better. Time Magazine turned what should have been Asia Wilson's celebration into another Caitlyn Clark controversy, and now everyone's upset. The media needs to stop creating division and start celebrating greatness. If you're tired of this drama too and want more real talk about the WNBA, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation honest and drama-free.